Nipa kunle namdole shing yende gunge genpa semjen gunge nye jikpo tamje genla gunja enze. Omen joge yenge podane dusum sangye gunge ngogoni. Rasem jogo ngasuma denze be zawe lami shabla sowa ende. Naso, da tomar dambi chu simbi kulung sampo. Nijungi sambadang janchurgi simdang tembe koni dambi chu simbri shu.
In the beginning, please start by giving rise to the most excellent, pure intention of listening to the sacred Dharma, the intention of renunciation and the motivation of the awakened mind of bodhicitta.
Da inteni khasa dinda nizang ringla ngara nani sugudewo machungni dini manzu shudindi tsukdu mason. Tanda mituni da tsuyayin.
In the last two Dharma sessions, as you could have seen, we had a substitute because I myself has fallen sick and I was unwell, but now I'm here to continue with you.
Da nganzu simgi rangshin wasa di gante yime teni lungdang rikpa pe la sope kuni gebar tena pepe ki shung Gyud Lama de la tusam nangshin pe kapre.
In this Dharma session, we are concerned with studying and contemplating on the treatise known as the Gyud Lama or Uttara Tantra Shastra, the treatise that employs different reasonings, examples, scriptural statements to demonstrate the nature of our mind. It's the treatise that points out to the luminous nature of our mind.
Teni takasang nganzu ngondo ki tsudula tenju diki tsen tekwa chenpo Gyud Lama tenju se titang telbi koni teni tenju diki gyabchong kare imbatang teni tenju diki jujatsu kare imbatang tenju diki goba pyen kare imba asani tende ki ta sache sum dawachi dan trevi koni nge kasa rimbashindu shuye chini ta dinani kasa nganzu kotangbo tenju ki tsengi nangla tekwa chimbo sayadi shu simbare teni tering ta nipa tang sumba tenzu ni rimbashindu shuge yinzi.
In the previous Dharma sessions, I have started explaining a little bit about the title of the text and kind of in a manner of preliminary preparing us for engaging with the main body of this treatise. So we looked at the title, and the title consists of 3 parts: Mahayana, Uttaratantra Shastra, Treatise, right? Mahayana, Great Vehicle, is one part, Uttaratantra Shastra, that's another part, and the Treatise, that's the third part. And by looking at these 3 parts of the title, I also engaged in the conversation about 3 topics related to those 3 parts of the title. The topics were the history of this text, the main subject matter of this text, and the benefits and reasons for us studying this text, right? So these 3 topics. And in the last classes, we have already covered one of the 3 parts of the title. That's the part known as the Mahayana, right, or the Great Vehicle. So I already explained that. And now we'll continue with the explanation of the remaining 2 parts of the title and the remaining topics that are yet to be covered.
당에 딘데스 슈고의 김신디 지당 아주 sögin라 땡주디 마 시용디 당보들라티니 뒤든지 시고그레스 가레스나티니 시행기 시되고 년경기 년되고 되니 조디당 안조이는 지금 만화소에는 bird's eye view 세그와 딘데디 야보치 당봉해 봐이나 아니 워기 땡주 저자된 중에라 펜도 연결해 있으니 딘데 시소요래 라버도 땡주기 챈디 주제권에 딱 봐이나 되니 랍라 챈된 소니 챈코랑라 디시 야보치 겹나 안 땡주 코랑 난게 든다 쪼쪼든서 가래 이면디 챈데 랑게 나니 로랑이 또 그래스니 나라주 sögin기 시술라 딘데요래 딘데 이마송사니 니 딘데스마 슈에기 김신디 딘데 답으시래
So Gyurme, the tradition, the reason for taking all this time to go through the title and looking at the title through the lens of those 3 topics is that, it's a tradition, it's a traditional way of studying a treatise. When it comes to explaining such a great treatise like the Uttaratantra Shastra, there is the approach, traditional approach of first giving a summary, let's say, of the brief summary of the whole text, so that later will be much easier for the one who teaches, for those who receive the teachings, to kind of follow. Once we start looking at the nitty-gritty details, it will be much easier because we already would have what Khenpo said in English, this bird's eye view, right? First, we kind of zoom out and look at this text as the whole. So later, going through step by step, it will already be much easier for the one who explains, for those who listen. Another way is also for tradition to take time to explain the meaning of the title. It's because it is said that, in the best case scenario, if we really explain the title well, then the students, just by knowing the title, will be able to understand this kind of the subject matter of the text. They will be able to really comprehend what is this text about. That subject matter, they will be understood clearly just by knowing the title, right? If the title explained well, it will help us then to kind of have that clear understanding of the main topic of the text.
가장 대바침보세디 슈심베 왕도타니 다 니바탄 숨바디 카레스나 Gyud Lama tenju sini ni yore. Tini Gyud Lama se digita shung khorang ki chojang oni di zo di kari yimin di digitem bare. Tini tenju se dida chidang jebayi na kasubaba di kadang tenju nigin nani tenju yin se di labare. Ine yang tanda nganzu da gowa lindang jebayi na tenju se di la nganzu shung di ki goba tembare la gowa lena peche len chogre. Tindi indi Gyud Lama se di ki choja tini tenju se di ki goba di ni yore. Ta den nani tini ta Gyud Lama se di sanyi shung korang la chube kapsu la godi la chi yungre, dudun chi yungre choja kare ime, dudun nge shugi yin. Ta diri nge kare shugi yin sina tini sumba tenju se di tang chelbe toni tenju di sanji ki tini sungwe ki gyumsen tang nganzu kinte la tesam che na goba kare yore, pendo kare yore. Tini kandis ta tende kin goba tang peyon di nganzu gyula keto kore se tidi shugi. Ta tordu na tiring sumba tenju se di tang trebe kone shung di la chukbaam tesam che begi gobaam peyon di nima shugi.
Among the three parts of the title, in the last few Dharma sessions, we have already looked at one part, that is the Mahayana, that Sanskrit term, or we can say the great vehicle. And we related that to the first among the three topics, that's the history. Kind of we portrayed a little bit, gave a little bit of the historical background of the treatise. Now, if we look at the remaining two parts of the title, one is the Gyud Lama, that's Tibetan, Uttaratantra Shastra, that's Sanskrit. Well, in English, we can roughly translate Gyud Lama as the highest continuum, right? That part of the title relates to the main subject matter, right? Among the three topics, the one of the subject matter of the text, well, that's related to the Gyud Lama, or highest continuum part of the title. The third part, the word treatise. So this term treatise, well, generally we distinguish all the Dharma into two, the words of the Buddha and the commentaries composed on the words of the Buddha. And the treatise is exactly those commentaries, not the direct words of the Buddha, but the commentaries composed by the followers on the words of the Buddha. And here, in this context of this Dharma session, really this part of the title, this term treatise, will help us to understand the reasons, the benefits for studying, reflecting, learning about this text. So that's what we will look at today. Because the other part of the title, the highest continuum and the main topic, this is something we are going to explain by looking at the verse from the text that summarizes the main topic of the text, right? There is the summary of the text. And through that summary, we will also understand the term highest continuum, but this we will do in the later Dharma sessions, later classes. So today, we'll look at the third part of the title, that is the term treatise, right? Commentary, treatise. And we will see what is really the reasons for us, or we can say what are really the benefits that will ensue from us engaging with this treatise.
Tenju se di chidang tsik zamla sambatang bayi na nganzu shastra se di ki Sanskrit ki radi ki begyur cha di ki vare. Da chidang tenchu se di karare se du nganzu sangye ki sungsha pe ki ka che yore. Teni ka di sabwa tang kya che wa yinba yindu nganzu mi kansa che ki chasang lobchong chang tuku marila kashe ni sabo yinba yindu nganzu lamsang hako tuku mare, nyamsu len tuku mare. Tende yinba yindu tenpa chumnen deke sungsha pe ki ka shila shani de jesu chungwe ki kepa tang drubi kansa dinzu ki maung be semchen dinzu sangye ki ka kya chenpo tang sabala ani tela du juk tuba tang nyamsu len shebe ki chedula ani gongdel ki tsuldu tsamsha be ki shung dinzu la chidang tenju sini azadus nguzin chigi yorwa.
The term treatise, etymologically, can say in Tibetan that Tenchu consists of two parts, and that's the translation into Tibetan of the Sanskrit term Shastra. So what is this Shastra? What is the treatise? When the Buddha has spoken the Dharma, directly, these words of the Buddha, those teachings were recorded, and the teachings spoken by the Buddha, most part, were extremely elaborate and quite deep. And because they're so elaborate, so detailed, and so deep in meaning, we, for most part, cannot just really study most of them because there are so many, they're vast in number. And because the meaning of those teachings is quite profound, we also can't easily understand the meaning and thus put those instructions into practice. So we need some help, right, to engage with the words of the Buddha. And therefore, the learned and accomplished masters, the followers of the Buddha in the past and present, they came to help us by composing treatises. That's to say, the direct commentaries on the intent of the Buddha's words, to help the future generations to engage with the Buddha's teachings, to understand them, to be able to put them into practice. So those accomplished and learned, with skilled and wise teachers, therefore commented on the intent and made it much easier for us, the future generations, to understand.
Teni dakasu babe tenju se ki tsikdi gopa tang dili yongdu kandere sena da chidang kechi sheba ina ngaransu dondala sanu tangba ina teni tenju se de la kechu sam yundin idang denpe ki rangshin chichila segi yu sungbare shas tara se ki tsikdi bebe ke la tegara gyurdo du teni chöba tang gyopa sini chöba sena gyurjo tang barwa nyomongbe ki misem mashiwadi shivar sutupke nyomong mangbo yokendi nyomong mebe ki rangshin la sutupke teni diba mangbo yoba tensu sal tupke tende ki nyuba yokengi rangshin chigila ani chö sini chöbe nyuba yoba teni niba de la gyop segyo re sungbara ta ngaransu chö ni debu di gari cha yungo re sena gyop yungo re sungbara gyop gari ni gyop yo re sena teni chir dunga gi temba kamsum kharwa tang teni cheta tu ta ngaransu 시시 니가게 탈레 말롱 와르체니 겹 연구여레스 덴데 임바인데 다 돌드나 텐주세 디기 취비 연된다 여바 니비 연된 겹비 연된 여바 데니 칸데스 겹고 그래서나 텐주라 퇴섬 제비코니 랑기 랑취니 랑기랑을 겹고 그래서 진짜 랑스나 디그리 신스나 디그리 간다 데 취비코니 겹이 누바 유켄기 취지라 텐주스니 세기레스니 다 된다 삼다 땅바이나 딘데 임바인디 다 nganzoyang kasupabe Gyud Lama shung tenjotela lobjong jangne goba garesna ngaranzu kyob yungere sungbare chebikoni
So now to relate this part of the title Treatise with the topic of reasons and benefits for studying, engaging with this treatise. So how it will really help us, right? What's the reason for us to engage with this treatise? For that, we need to look at the etymology of this word treatise. Well, in Tibetan, it consists of two parts, tenshyo, in Sanskrit tu, shastra. And this points out that any given treatise is endowed with two special features, two qualities, right? Because there are two parts to the term. And those two qualities are it protects us and it transforms us. Then che. So let's look first at this second part of the term che in Tibetan, and in English we can say it's to transform. Right? So part of the treatise, the word treatise is actually the word to transform. It means that the treatise has this kind of capacity, power to transform our minds, disturbed minds, afflicted minds, ridden with many disturbing, afflictive emotions. It has the power to clear away those disturbances, those afflictions. It has that power to transform us. When we look at the other term, to protect, how does the text, the treatise protects us? Right? And from what, first of all? Well, it protects us from the suffering, generally the suffering of the three realms in samsara, and more specifically, it protects us from falling into the two extremes of existence and personal peace. So that's protection, right? It protects us and transforms. So to connect these two, actually, what happens is that, when we engage with the treatise, when we study it, when we reflect on the meaning of the treatise, it transforms us. And because it transforms us, we are protected from the suffering. In this way, actually, it's we who protect ourselves by transforming our minds through engaging with the treatise. You see, this is the power of the treatise. It's twofold. We engage with the treatise and it really transforms us. It clears away our disturbing emotions, and in this way we protect ourselves from the suffering. So that's the meaning of this term, treatise, right? Two qualities, two features. So here, then, in our context, the treatise is the treatise of the Gyud Lama, or highest continuum. And when we study, reflect, engage with this treatise, likewise, it's going to transform our lives. It's going to transform our disturbed, afflicted mind states. And for that, it's going to protect us from all the suffering. That's the benefit, right? Right there. That's the purpose for studying this treatise.
Tadi tsikdela nyupa chumbaji yore tengidu samle yabu tangyo karesena kerang kyob gugidu na kareche gugiresena chue gugirese diredwa nganasu namgi injikela ina be the change that you want to see segrwa ta nganzu machu ba ina chi tenju sini mangbo nyemba tang jangba tang peje mangbo ji nyune ke yoma ina ya tini digi nganzu le ta kyop kha porwa nganasu mizichi peje khana la desha ba ina ya kyop kha pores karresna chö yo mare sebi kejere kyop dang chö ni la gyude gi dewa yores chö na kyop gre machu na kyop mare sumare di jidi da dordi na tenju se di peja dawatang lobjong chae kin depso dawatang sheja mangboji shegi yobe tinde knowledge dawa kyangba maimba dordi na di chö se di kare nyamlin che gu yore sendi tembare dwa kerangi ngama nima dindani dawala soso pena chö ma jepe ngongi ngaki lunga isum kande yo tanda kande du dinda chik chela kare chagi du dawa chik chela kare chagi du suni manzo nada check and balance dawa jepe thone gyurjo tanggo gre slabare ndi machimba ina ani kyope kala khago re suni yang niba chimbu shiu jire chikdala tordina nyamlin che gore sebetun da chire dwa
I think there is a great power in knowing this terminology, this kind of etymology, the meaning of the word. Because what it points out to us, just this one term, treatise, right? Well, from Tibetan, Tencho, consisting of these two parts, these two qualities, what it really teaches us, this term, is that if we want to be protected, we absolutely need to transform. We need to change. As Khenpo said, be the change you want to see, right? That's what we say in English. And so if we really want to transform our lives ourselves, yes, if we want to transform our lives ourselves, we need to, it's not enough to just study the text, like buy a lot of books, surround ourselves with these books, maybe read all of them and just have this kind of intellectual knowledge and not let them really transform us. Then these books are not going to protect us, right? So the protection coming from treatise does not come from just having it. You know, spending our lives in a library is not going to protect us from suffering. So the protection is not happens when we just like have this book, we studied it, and that's enough. It's only when we let this treatise really change us from within, when we let these teachings transform our lives. So in this way, this one term, Tencho, the treatise, points out to us this deep truth that it's only when we transform our minds and negative minds, we are protected. And when we do not transform or change our minds, our negative, disturbed minds, we are not protected, right? So again, what it really, really points out to is that for the real protection, we need to transform. And for transformation, it's not enough to just like study this book like we studied many different books in the college, like a textbook, a manual, right? Maybe we got some knowledge from a text manual, but that knowledge will remain like just as a theory. This is not what we are talking about. We really need to put these teachings into practice. We need to experience the meaning of these teachings in our lives. We need to let them transform us. So how to, well, we can check ourselves, like before we met the Dharma, before we started engaging the Dharma, you know, what were my actions, words, my thoughts? Maybe don't go even that far. Think about just a month ago, right? Before studying, starting these Dharma sessions. What did I do in my life? What did I say to others? What did I think, right? So check and balance, right? That's how we really engage with the Dharma. Otherwise, we can't be protected. This protection is not going to come from just coming to class, studying, and leave it as a mere theory. It's only when we really let the teachings transform our minds, then we are protected. And this we understand from just studying this term, Tencho, the treatise, right? So I think therefore it's really important, really powerful to understand the real meanings of the words. And here it really comes down to transforming our lives and being protected. And in order to transform our lives, it means we really have to put the teachings we study into practice.
Tapena mansu Gyud Lama lobjong chani tawa peshe ni chin sabare. Ta kerang ngarang sena ta kerang se ngarang chasan chibare. Ngarang sheke ina chibare. Dor dina ta kasang tawa nyingi ngongi nga nge samlo tangta nge ngai suin sambeki ichi chure. Nge semgi ngogo di kare in sambeki samlo tang su chure. Tini danda tawa nyingi chela da nga zu kala kansam chi tiko la lobjong changbare. Tini to zu chi samlo tangta susu la chi ta nga zu ina perspective sigirwa. View tawa da wuchi chö yoba inani, gyuwa tos tebi yoba ni, ta nga rangzu tos kyo pare. Tenju se digi, goba penyon di jung song pare. Ta tsanin gyuwa te meba inani, tini chö meba inani, nga zu lo kyo biyo marwa. Tenju se goba di, dadung ya, nga rangzu la tobi yo mare, dribu di.
For example, we can already check ourselves and see how studying this treatise for the last month or two, I would say, right? Since we start meeting, has changed our lives. And by our, I also include myself. I'm no different from you, the listeners, even though I'm in a position of a teacher. But really, if I look at myself, how was my mind before I started teaching the text 2 months ago? And you can look at your minds before you start receiving the teachings, right? So what were my beliefs about my true nature, my, essence of my mind, nature of my mind? What were they before I had this first Dharma session, right? And then I studied, so we can, right, think like this personally. Then I studied for these few months. Really, how did that change my view, my perspective about myself, about my true nature? If we see some changes, right, that means that we are now somewhat protected, right? That transformation equals the amount of protection from pain, from dissatisfaction, from suffering. So if we have not experienced much of transformation or personal change, that means then, well, we are not protected yet. And if we do notice right now some change in our view, in our beliefs, in our perspectives, we can say that this treatise is already benefiting us, right? There is already great purpose for studying and engaging, practicing this treatise, right? So this treatise and the purpose in this way, these benefits, is very connected.
Tende intuita, chidang anzu nangshu lobjong chang yong tu tini anzu rikshung dan kei kaga yong yu yoba intu. Penata tenju se di shastra se di treatise se di gyursha yore. Tenzu ta matikpa kanya yoma rawa hine yang kang tup chik shastra se korang ki concept di hago ke chumbare. Lamsang shastra se na gare res na treatise res sha sha pai na nganzu di 난기 내가 다오디 아주 사보를 주투고면 봐. 어다 되는 망고 요래 된수 제마더니 아주 측경바 장원 많이 봐. 측되게 갑종기 컨셉지요 봐. 가시 나라서 패밀리를 용세 그래. 가시 양빼 나라서 짠이 매겨드니 용세 바래. and 인도 네바도 딜라티니 럽촌 차이데 계신 바래.
Now, when we study the Dharma, when we practice engage in the Dharma, like these Dharma sessions, right? We all come from different cultures, backgrounds. So we'll be actually receiving these teachings in different languages, right? So those who listen in English, they hear this term treatise, because that's how we generally transform the Sanskrit term shastra. Like sometimes we also say commentary, treatise. But word treatise in English won't tell you much, right? In and of itself, perhaps. So you really need to dig deeper and understand what is meant by this original term shastra. What is the meaning loaded in this word shastra in Sanskrit? Because each word has some concepts behind it, right? So we don't need to just stick by, on the level of words, like, oh, I received the teachings, and we can repeat the words. We really need to try to understand what are the concepts attached to those terms, to those original terms, really, like Shastra. So, like, really understanding the key points, not only the word itself, Shastra or treatise, but really the key points. What is that term? What did they really mean by it? Right? What is the concept behind it? Because some concepts are going to be familiar. So I'm not saying each word you need to really look at and it's going to be completely new. No, some of that you already understand, from before. But some concept behind some words are going to be quite new for your personal culture, where you're coming from. So it's really important to do that kind of digging and not just know the words of the teachings, but understand the concepts, the ideas that stand behind those words.
다디치당 아주 딘주세 디 돈다다버지 다원나 벤낭 아주 가수바빙 규라마 다워기 슝데라 디게다 라 죽바이나 딱 디게 안줄라 간디스 겹그래 딩 안주 최용도 최당디 간디스 최고 그래 세기 다디 인디징아 마치 슈긴스 다 최비고니 겹그래스 라브라 간디스 겹그래스.
Now I would like to spend some time discussing how, in particular, this treatise, the one that we are concerned with here, the Uttara Tantra, the Gyud Lama, highest continuum, how is it going to protect us? In what way it's going to protect us? We have already seen that protection comes from the deep transformation. So therefore, I would love to look at how this specific treatise is going to enable us to transform our minds so that then protection can take place.
드니 다 딩이 사치 니더지 고니슈기 당보디다 지당 Gyud Lama dela tini juk yonti kapsula kopa kare yore se chidang tini nipa dela chetaudu chidang nganchu tanda di Gyud Lama korang ki kam shebe kapsula liu tama dela saji korang surbachi yore kam tembe kopa 세지 다 딘수 나라더니 규대버 셰빙 닝버게 캄디 되니 tembi batang nyamsu lembi batang ani hamagobi nyimiksini sebu sungere tensu dan tebi kuni shugi tindu ta tangbo nga jidang di shugi.
And I'm going to explain how this treatise protects us, through transformation, or what is, in other words, the purpose of studying this text in two ways. First of all, I would like to address generally how engaging with this text is going to help us. So what is the purpose really of engaging with this treatise, kind of in a general way, right? And secondly, I would like to look specifically at actually at part of the outline of this text in the chapter on Buddha nature, the element of the 7 Vajra points. The last subsection there explains what is the purpose of knowing about Buddha nature. What is really the benefits that ensue from us really, coming to know Buddha nature, this element, our enlightened element, right? So this is more specific, really comes from this text. So there is this whole chapter that clearly explains what are the purposes of learning about Buddha nature and what are the defects that come from, what are the faults, right, that come from us not knowing about our enlightened nature. So that's a more specific kind of explanation that we will look at.
Da jidang nganzu kyasi shiwa le ani nganazu nangba sanje pa ki tini hishe la nganazu korwa la korea tang dunga nyongye de chasang di gawani yungo yoresena semki sangwa di hamago yongdu kapsula tini dungaji yongbare sungbare tini dungalle tendu targu guduna semki sangwa di hagwe di ta ngaranzu ina chi 내가 체슈 차 되게 그래 송말에
Dampu di shivach lagi iche tiniden.
게세 더 지당 아주 남바 산제베게 캐상공도 슈바나시 ngaranzu dedu tamjidi semla tuni yungge yobadi 지당기 따둑기 이시 시자지로 봐 아니 게세 시와라기 준준낭라 sem기 상와디 하마고 용디 되는 ngaranzu dungal 용 코와라 코고거래 딜레 탈고도나 예버도 sem기 상와디 하고거래 신송바래
Ichi chikmalabnara. Bogi ichi chik sumbare. Vaso. Generally, all Buddhists agree across the board that really everything comes down to our mind. Right? That's kind of the ruling factor. But specifically, Shantideva, in the Way of the Bodhisattva, stated so beautifully that if we want to be free of all the suffering, wandering in this vicious, endless cyclic existence, we absolutely need to come to know the secret of our minds. That's how he put it, right? Only when we know the secret of the mind, we can be free from all this misery and dissatisfaction, permanently free, right? Really kind of once and for all free. So we need to know the secret of the mind. That's the most important, really key point.
당한주 가르치니 sem기 상와디 하고 두고요 말했으나 ngaransu katu ina yang natu inyi chigire sumbaре sem gi sangwa de la ta yong du sem gi sangwa de kare yimba de ma thong ni yang na do dog ba kre do dog bi ko ni no ru ju chi ge re yang na kurwa de be ko ni no ru ju chi ge re sung ba re de yong du da ngaran su gi no tu che sho ni bu de do do dang kur de se di ni cha de ge re and de ni bu di ni yobay na sem gi sangwa di to to gu ma re la de ni bu yebi kyum sen la de ni ngaran su sem gi sangwa da thong ma to ba re sung ba re da donda do do da uchi ba na.
And when it comes to realizing the secret of the mind, there are two pitfalls that we might come across. The one is us not really seeing the real, this like secret of the mind that's there, and instead seeing something that's not there. And we call that, with a technical term in Buddhism, like superimposition, like we're imposing something what's actually not the case. It's not there, and we still we kind of exaggerate, superimpose. And another fault is when we don't see the secret of the mind as it is, and instead we actually denigrate what's there. We say it's not there, right? So we deny it. So there's these two faults of exaggerating and denying. And for as long as there is these two tendencies that we do when it comes to realizing the secret of the mind, right? For as long as they are present, we're not going to really see or realize the secret of the mind. That's kind of in short, right? I'm giving a really like a brief explanation here.
Ta de yang to go de bu che na pe go de bu se na ngaran su sem la ta yong du yana di re se ke chik chun yong gre es la bare yana di mare tu se chik ka yong gre es la bare ta nilu di kar re se na chun ba tang ka ba ni ka mare dinde yimba indu che ranjung dorje ki chaji manam ki nala din sheba kangi tsumba me dimin sheje kangi kakba me lo le debi chunyi duma je yangda dungi tani ngebar shogo se sunore ta ganda nganzu inchi ke la ina katu ina yang yana it's se chidang yana it's not se shoroba ta it's se di todogre it's not se di kurdebre de nika ki thale deba ji kerangi samlutang da samlutang se korbe tinde ki ji nyongwa ji ke tu kuduna de dini da sem korangi tototan dawa ji la samlutang tu bare sumare tadi totok se nga ju to su ji todo tang kudip se na tadu ki chik dawa yin yang to ko kha bo yena tini chomba tang kak ba se na tadi nga ju damga ki chik ro ba.
To make it a bit easier to understand, right? When we look at our minds, there's two tendencies that happen. The one is that we really affirm something. Oh, it is it. This is it. That's the one, right? We point our finger to something and really assert it to be that way. And another tendency is that we say it's not that, and we deny something, right? But the natural state has nothing to do with either affirmation or nor negation, right? I'll say it again. Sorry. The natural state has nothing to do with neither affirmation nor negation. And Ranjun Dorje, the third Karmapa, has also beautifully stated that in the Mahamudra Aspiration Prayer, verse 12, it cannot be shown by saying this is it. It cannot be refuted by saying this is not it. It is unconditioned dharmata, suchness, beyond conceptual mind. May we know with certainty the perfect ultimate truth. Now, in this first line, it said it cannot be shown by saying this is it. That's what we do, right? This saying this is it, us really showing, pointing our finger, right? Saying this is it. That's what we call in the more philosophical, technical kind of language, superimposition. And when we say this is not it, right, we refute it. And that's what we call denigration. But since these terms could be a bit difficult, like superimposition, denigration, and we can follow the terminology of PIF instructions and just call it like kind of affirmation and refutation, right? Something is shown and something is refuted. But the truth is, as it says here in the verse, we really need to go beyond doing that, beyond really affirming, asserting something, and beyond denigrating it, right? We really need to experience this unconditioned natural state that lies beyond conceptual mind.
당에디 던다 도도 데 가리슈바 인세나 Gyud Lama dila 퇴삼 제니 거바 가리 요레스 라바나 다 제당 망부숭 요레 원이 이내야 다 돈다 도도 다버 슈바이나 ngaran su semjing ngobdi tingeki dodo kurdimni ki thala malung watang sasha maybe ki ranshin yimbala ani yimbar shetu gres ngaran su ki rimbaishin do tini the sam komsum chiyongde nganzu ki to tu gre ti karres ne semgi saware sungbare tadi nganzu chidangi gyulama ki 거박이 닝부라고 지도 시안나 페이지 디기메로 딩도.
What am I trying to say here? Right, to kind of the bottom line is that when the purpose for let's say like the generally what's the purpose for studying this text, and a lot can be said about that purpose, and a lot will be mentioned in the text as we continue studying it, right? The text elaborates on that, but if I were to really give you right now the kind of like the distilled, right, the essence of what is the purpose, what's the general purpose of studying this text, is for us to really come to realize, to see this mind's secret. By studying, reflecting, putting these teachings into practice, the mind's secret, the mind's nature that is free of these two extremes of being asserted as something, or being refuted as not being something. It's really free of us needing to add something to it or clear away something from it, right? It is just as it is. And coming to see that mind's secret is really the main purpose of engaging with this treatise.
줄량 셈라 돌량 셈인데 저도 담지 셈라 쳐버쇼 송르와 디니 다 디송바데 돈다 찍바레 강달 셈라 저도 쳐바지 용그래
И Khenpo de Tsikang Dampo. Lesson.
줄량 셈라 돌량 셈인데 저도 담지 셈라 쳐버쇼 송르와
As it is said in the text, really the confusion is the mind, but also realization. Freedom from that confusion is also the mind. May we cut through all these doubts, these kind of superimpositions about mind. That's what we need to do.
다 지당 고 되고 지니게 제시해 있는 간수 딩상 지 딩상 세나미는 간수 남규 베제 땅에 식스다 which samtang ba inen tini Gyud Lama la thosam chebe gobat kare yoresana chikdi da tingsa nga zum chidang semshum gi kangel shuchum bodwa lack of self esteem confident lagbar du ngaran zula da che peje spiritual depressions na digmedo che jebe kapsula salam ge namsha dan debudi kya cheta dan sabda chuyongdu ngaran zu ki semla semshu cha dwe dan ji confident mind ma tine kangye ji ngaran zu tinte shu dukin chasang la dangbu yongre dinzo yang chasang tine karesena gyudeshe ningbudi ngaran zu mato yongdu yongre sungbare tadi sani woni shungkorang kapsula yongre tene chikdi ngazu 소소라이네 닝제 고마도 미 심발라이네 닝제 게 마도 버준 거였어. 당아주 대바 전부 값을라 장주 셈색으로 봐. 디 가르치는 연구였으나 랑단 셈진 신니까디 넘버 미다바 여바이네야. 된게 땡돌라 다 니가 직바인 삼바다보다. 야나 랑 대화 되바다 동알 미드바 나시 심진 심바데 인삼바들 직바 삼라땅 마도 땅 알아서 있는지 equality 세그와 디메니 되니 discrimination 더버디 슉춤바 차용도 장주 셈기 냠데 스스라 닝제 고마도 밀라 닝제 고마도 강아지 되니 연구여래서 디양 그 데버셰비 닝부디 여바하마고 바다 되니 땅 알아서 있는지 mental poverty segerwa otende ke kangai mangbo jinga jula yongre lagwar tu theba chombo ki chudi shira ki sabodang gya chombo yimba indu maju nyamnin che yongdu lela bu kyone yo mare tendu jangjup sempa se di boba ke tsik theba cha shado sem mishum bar pawa se logo chombo ju gogre se sta ngaju logo di mebare logo di 가르치는 연구 yo mare sena rangshin semjen thamjela deshin yimbu yobala yoba hamako ngo마시 이마지 드니 하고바이나 아니 닝제 게토베 셈슈 게토베 덴데기다 강에 망보지 세두거래 스네드니 원이 단다 덴지 코랑 거버셰베 갑슬라 덴스 중거 다도드나 confident 당 self esteem 라 당한 땡스거라 뽑았어거라 데니 덴주 약보직 템보직 소소규라 쉐라 영국도나 랑기 셈기 뭐 대신이 뭐디 대바단 이세 약보직 계고거래스 디거바지 그래
And to make it even more easier to really relate to why do we really study, practice this treatise, to kind of use everyday language, right? What's the purpose of studying this text? Well, we can look at some psychological issues that all of us on the Dharma path experience time to time, right? And outside of Dharma path. So the one will be that many of us lack self-confidence, right? This kind of high self-esteem. You can say this kind of like a spiritual depression when we study the Dharma, practice the Dharma. At some point, sooner or later, usually in the beginning, like we come to see the enormity of the Dharma and all the paths and the bhumis that needs to be traversed, all these bodhisattva grounds, they're so vast, the teachings are so deep. So I start there. So we often most of us, we experience this kind of lack of self-confidence and issues with self-esteem, because when we come to face this vastness and depth of the Dharma paths, right, Dharma grounds, everything needs to be practiced to reach enlightenment, we get discouraged, we get overwhelmed, we get discouraged. It really happens to all of us, like, well, me, will I really be able? Right? It's because actually we don't realize our Buddha nature. That's the text explains. We will see it later in the text that all of this happens exactly because we lack this knowledge of our enlightened nature. We also have some other issues, such as we're unable to generate compassion for others when we don't feel that kind of genuine kindness and compassion to ourselves, right? We call that bodhicitta, or awakened mind, in the context of the great vehicle of the Mahayana, right? So the issue is that because we don't see that in reality we share this same nature, same essence. We all different only in terms of like different appearances, right? We're different from others in way how we appear, but deep within, we want exactly what other beings want. We want to avoid suffering. We want to be happy. We have that same essence, but we don't see it. So this lack of equality and, a lot of discrimination that happens in our minds, like we discriminate against others, it happens because we don't have compassion to ourselves in the first place. So we can't really have compassion for others, right? Because we don't really understand that we are the same. And this happens also because lacking understanding of Buddha nature, right? When we don't understand our enlightened nature and that enlightened nature also permeates all beings, then we experience this kind of mental poverty. Like we are unable to really feel that warmth, genuine kindness to ourselves, and also extend it towards everyone, knowing that we're all equal, we're all the same. And of course, because especially happens when we understand that the Dharma, really practicing the Dharma, getting better, transforming ourselves, getting enlightened, is really not an easy task. That's when we experience this kind of a crush of our spirit, right? A bit of discouragement happens to all of us. And that's why Tibetans, they added this term to, last syllable to the term bodhisattva. So when they translated bodhisattva into Tibetan, they added one extra syllable that really means to be heroic, to be courageous, right? They didn't add it for no reason. Because actually, it points out that we need a lot of courage, right, to really go through this, right? And we lack that. We don't have that courage, or we feel down about ourselves. So, we feel like we can't, we don't have the self-confidence, kindness to ourselves, exactly because we don't recognize our Buddha nature, we don't know about our Buddha nature, or we don't trust that we have Buddha nature. And once we come to know it, right, here comes the reason, what I'm trying to say, the purpose, reason studying this, engaging, not only studying, really engaging with the treatise, is the purpose is to come to know, come to recognize, come to trust our own basic goodness, known as Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha in Sanskrit. And that will clear away all these aforementioned issues, this kind of hardships, this kind of obstacles that we encounter on the path.
Tende indu ngarangi tete tengi dula yiche ye tene nge namju tende labki ye pena deshe nyingbo la labchon changni ngeshe yakbo di kiye di ani ngansu journey to enlightenment ki insurance yaksho diresta dile yachu yamare.
That's what I think myself, and I really trust it. Right? I really trust that once we gain certainty in our own basic goodness, our own enlightened element, Buddha nature, that certainty in our own basic enlightened nature will serve as the best type of insurance on the journey to enlightenment.
Chidang anzu la insurance yobai na to zu semba di lecha chungudwa. The insurance mebai na sem la tokpa dang ta kari chagi yunam ta kawal lepki yunam sambe ngangda chungudwa. Tende yindu nganzu nyamlen jegen lama denzula 제바이나 강에 가르쳐봐야네 콘솔라디 강섭도 연구민도 와 가르레스나 코란솔라 디기 인슈런스도 여래 이제 여러와 당아라즈디니 티 메용디 사니 가르쳐용 가발레비용 삼비기 anxiety 가디네 용되기도 와 the spiritual lamkala
Generally speaking, the more insurance, the more kind of this insurance we have, the more at ease we are, the more relaxed we are. And whenever we don't have any kind of insurance, any kind of guarantee, what happens to our minds, that our minds become ridden with anxiety, really, this fear, what worries, what will happen to me, right? There's no guarantee, there's no insurance of what's going to happen, on my spiritual path, especially, like, right? We have all this kind of undercurrent of anxiety at all times because we don't have this insurance. But when you look at the lamas, whatever happens in their lives, they don't go into panic. You see them not getting any anxiety, like panic attacks, right? They're just at ease and relaxed. It's because they have this they know about this insurance, right? They have this insurance, which is the real, total certainty in their own enlightened nature, Buddha nature, right? And when we don't have that certainty, so we kind of rid ourselves of this insurance, and that's what happens is then we really worry a lot. What will happen tomorrow? What will happen in my life, right? I don't know. This kind of anxiety is quite present on the backs of our minds, especially when it comes again to the spiritual path.
lasso the drink dortuna anzu tenjue ki chen ki nani sumba tenjue se dang tebe koni enchidang tenjue se di chöba dang kyoba 대양 간데스 겹그레스는 취니 겹그레스야지 디하고 그래서야지 니 가수바비 귤라메기 땡주타고라 차샤바이나 안 간줄라 간데스 겹그레스나 심기 상와 디니 토토당 사샤 메바티 하고바 임바티 아니 스스 고뇽 또숨지 거니 취니 ngaranzula kyopko gre sedi di ani kare kasubabe tenchudigi gobare sedi di shubai ani langma da geba yongre and emutuni tunachemani shugins.
In short, today what we looked at as the third, we looked at one more part of the title, that's the word treatise. And we have seen that treatise, the meaning of this term treatise, comes down to transforming and protecting. And how does the treatise do that? Well, they protect us by, transforming our minds. So the protection happens when we transform our lives, our minds. And here, for example, when we apply that knowledge to this treatise, the Gyud Lama, Uttara Tantra, right? How then studying and engaging, practicing this treatise is going to transform and thereby protect us? Well, we have seen that it's going to protect us when we understand, but not only understand, really also experience and realize the mind's secret, the mind's nature, which is free of any kind of assertions and denials, free of anything to add to it, free of anything to clear away from it, right? So us then understanding intellectually that's the true nature of our minds, but not leaving it there, also really experiencing it, putting it into practice, gaining some experience, and eventually gaining really stable realization of this mind's secret. That's what's going to protect us. That's how this treatise is going to transform our minds, our lives, and thereby protect us. That's what we have seen, and there is more details to follow. So we'll continue in the following Dharma sessions.
Suna Ranju Semjo Rinpoche Mage Panam Ge Gyureji Ge Ba Nyamba Meba Gone Gondo Pelvare Sho.
Last one. Thank you, Gyud Lama.